Thank you for joining us. As we know, cancer is still considered a topic that people want to avoid talking about. But actually, the more we know, the more we're prepared if, God forbid, it does come into our lives. Cancer is not usually inherited, but some types, mainly breast, ovarian, colorectal, and prostate cancer, can be strongly influenced by genes and can run in families. This evening, I'm speaking to Jess and Claire from Myogenes, and they're going to introduce Dahlia. Myogenes is an organisation that raises awareness for BRCA genes in a positive way and informs us about genetic testing. Jess's mother was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer at the age of 43, and the family only found out this was caused from a mutated BRCA1 gene a year after her diagnosis, and Jess was tested a few years later to find out she was also a carrier. Sadly, Jess's mum later passed away as her cancer was extremely aggressive, and Jess has made it her mission to educate others about BRCA genes so people can find out this information before their cancer would have the chance to manifest. It's also important for parents to be tested for their children and to spread the knowledge that men are equally likely to carry the gene. It was actually Jess's grandpa who passed the gene to her mum. So Jess and Claire, thank you for joining me, and Dahlia, and now we're going to pass over to Claire.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining tonight. And as Eva said, we are a company and we offer genetic testing through clinicians. And one of we do personalised medicine, looking at what medication is right for the individual based on your genes. But tonight is about raising awareness for the BRCA gene, particularly in Jewish Ashkenazis. I'm going to hand it over now to Jess, who will just talk about her personal story, and then over to our Dr. Dahlia to go through the whole process of finding out what happens if you are genetically tested and you have the BRCA gene.
Thank you. So my mum was diagnosed with cancer 6 years ago, and obviously, it came back 3 times, and during this sort of her, she found out.
Sorry, Jess. It's a bit echoey.
Very.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
It's popping in and out. Yes, I wonder.
Is that better?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry. Do you mind to start again? I apologise,
No,
but
it's
if
fine.
people can catch what you're saying.
No, don't worry, it's fine. Is that better now?
Yes.
Yeah. So my mum had triple negative breast cancer, and she only found out that this was caused from a BRCA gene about a year after her initial diagnosis. So she sort of took the private route and got tested through privately. And because of her, she obviously the aggressive nature of the cancer was caused from BRCA, and also she was 43 when she was diagnosed, which again is linked to BRCA's early onset of cancer. So I found out 2 years later that I had the BRCA gene as well. And basically I'm just trying to raise awareness for it because that's what she sort of wanted to do as well, and educate others, and that's sort of what I'm trying to make her proud and follow her legacy by doing the same. So thank you for listening, and on to Dahlia.
Thank you, Jess. Hello, everybody. So I'm going to try and share my screen and go through a quick presentation, and then we can have a question and answer session afterwards. I won't be able to see any questions in the chat during, but we can pick them up then. Let's just see. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so we're just going to go through a few main points. So I'm going to go through the just a bit of basic genetics, just to give us a background. Then we will talk about familial cancer or inherited cancer, and we're going to focus on the BRCA genes, and I'll explain a little bit about why that's especially important here. We'll talk through the different screening and management options for people who are BRCA variant carriers, and then I'll answer any questions. Okay, so just in terms of DNA and our genes, so we know that DNA is a chemical and it's contained in our cells, and this is where our genetic information is stored. The information that's encoded within our DNA contains the instructions for making and maintaining our bodies. And it contains about 20,000 genes, which make these instructions. And what they do is they code for the building blocks that our bodies are compromised of. So for example, keratin in the hair, or the protein in the fingernails, all of these are made from genes which code for the instructions. Sorry, I'm just a bit, for some reason my screen's stuck. All right, there we go. So in terms of genetics and the differences between us, we are very similar to each other. So most people share the majority of their genetic sequence, and only about 0.1% will be different between each person. But that still actually is a lot of differences because of how much DNA we have and how much of the sequence there is. So even though there's only 0.1% difference between me and you, that would still be 3 million differences between us, or differences in our DNA. And most of these changes are not problematic. So they would just explain why we are different. So why somebody has brown eyes while someone has blue eyes. But some of these changes can cause problems with our health, for example, by causing a predisposition to cancer. So if we talk about the inherited cancer risks in terms of our genetics, some inherited genetic mutations can increase your lifetime cancer risk by up to 40 times. So it can really make a big difference when you compare to somebody who does not have a genetic mutation. And the other thing to really think about is that this doesn't only affect you, because you can also pass this on to family members. And also other family members who don't know about this might also be carrying the similar gene. And for example, if we just look at breast cancer, which is one of the things that we will focus on today, the average population risk is 5%, but with a mutation such as a BRCA mutation, this can go up to over 80%. So it really does make a difference to your risk, and it's therefore very important to know about it. Now, some of the things to think about that might mean a cancer is inherited or runs in a family. So this is not all cancer cases. It's about 5 to 10% of cancer cases. These cancers, as Jess mentioned, may develop at an earlier age than usual. So in the general population, it's quite unusual to get, for example, breast cancer that's diagnosed under the age of 50. But in patients with BRCA mutations, this might happen much earlier. The other thing to think about is that several family members might be affected, and these could often be multiple generations, and they may usually be on one side of the family, as this is where the gene is being passed on. Many inherited cancer syndromes will show up with a particular pattern of cancers. So having a gene can predispose you to getting more than one type of cancer. For example, breast and ovarian cancer are very linked, so you might see this pattern in a family. And as I mentioned, the individuals may develop more than one cancer. If you do carry this mutation, your children are all at 50-50 risk, or 1 in 2 chance of inheriting the mutation as well. And therefore, they may also need screening and therefore management. So just to touch upon the BRCA genes themselves. So BRCA actually stands for breast cancer genes. So all of us have BRCA genes, but in some cases, there are mutations that make these genes not work as well as they should. And in their normal role, they are involved in repairing damaged DNA. So all of our cells will at some point have DNA that is damaged. So we have these special mechanisms to repair the DNA. But if your genes that are supposed to help repair the DNA are not working, you will get a lot more damage to the DNA, and eventually that can lead to cancer. And that is the reason that having a faulty BRCA gene, or a gene that doesn't work as well, can predispose to cancer. And in the general population, it's thought that about 1 in 400 people have a BRCA gene variant. But in the Ashkenazi Jewish population, it's thought to be as high as 1 in 40. So it's a lot higher. And we do often see that breast cancer occurs at quite a high rate in the Ashkenazi Jewish population, and this is the reason. So I think it's especially important for today's talk to be aware about these genes, as they really aren't that uncommon, unfortunately. I just wanted to put this up because this is the media is really a way that a lot of people become aware about everything, really, including health issues. But so Angelina Jolie has a BRCA1 mutation, and she was very public about the fact that she decided to have her breast tissue removed before developing cancer, which would prevent her having cancer in the future. And this actually led to an unprecedented rise in people getting their BRCA genes tested, which I think is a very positive thing. So sometimes celebrity media can be useful. So now if we just speak about the BRCA1 risk. So what I'm going to do is tell you about the two genes separately, because they are a little bit different to each other. So for BRCA1, for women, the risk of getting breast cancer over your lifetime is very high. So it's between 60 to 90% and can often be early onset, meaning maybe in your 30s or 40s. The other thing to remember is if you've had breast cancer in one breast with a BRCA gene, it doesn't mean that you won't develop another one in the other breast. So the risk of having a contralateral breast cancer is about 50% in your lifetime. The risk of ovarian cancer is between 40 and 60% as well. And I'll tell you about the different things that you can do to prevent this. Now, people often forget the male side of BRCA. And I just wanted to mention, so for males with BRCA1, the risks are not that high. So in terms of male breast cancer, it's still increased because men very rarely get breast cancer. So in the general population, it's less than 1 in 1,000 that would get it. But with male BRCA carriers, BRCA1, it can increase to 1%, which is actually quite a substantial increase in general, but is still relatively rare. Now, in terms of prostate cancer, with BRCA1, we think that the prostate cancer risk is about similar to the population. So we're not extremely worried about prostate in terms of BRCA1. Now, in terms of BRCA2, this is a little bit different. So the breast cancer risks for women are slightly lower, 45 to 85%, so still high. The contralateral breast cancer risk is again 50%. And the ovarian cancer risk is lower than with BRCA1, so it's 10 to 30%, but that is still extremely high compared to the general population. Now for men, BRCA2 has a bit more implications. The incidence of breast cancer is higher, so it's about 5 to 10%. And there is a higher risk of prostate cancer. About 1 in 4 men with a BRCA2 mutation will develop prostate cancer. And the important thing about this as well is that it's often earlier onset than in the general population. So that would mean up to the years of 40. It's very rare to get prostate cancer if you're younger than 40 years otherwise. And it can also be more aggressive because I think a lot of men do get diagnosed with prostate cancer when they're much older. And this is very often not the cause of their death. But if you have an aggressive prostate cancer when you're younger, this can be very dangerous. With BRCA2, there are also slightly increased risks of pancreatic cancer and melanoma. So this is not really something that you can screen for very easily, but it's important to be aware that there is a slight increase in the risk. Although it's not entirely clear how much this is increased, and it seems to be small, but we do see more cases of pancreatic cancer and melanoma. Now, in terms of the breast cancer risk, what can you do about it? So there are different things to do. First of all, you can get screening. One thing that I'll just say to all of you now, it's really important to be breast aware. So women, you should be doing self-checks. And if you notice anything out of the ordinary, be that being a lump or just a change in how your breasts look, maybe even a rash or any change of the nipple, you should get it checked early. The other screening tools are breast scans, so mammograms or MRIs. And mammograms are usually used in women who are a bit older, so at least over 40, while MRIs are better for younger women. And that's to do with how dense the breast tissue is. But for some patients with BRCA mutations, we would say that they should have MRIs as early as 25 years, as the risk of developing breast cancer from 25 years on is not that small. Now, in terms of preventative surgery, which is what Angelina Jolie had, you can basically remove all breast tissue. And this is called a bilateral risk-reducing mastectomy. And this would reduce the risk of breast cancer happening up to 95%. The reason that it's not 100% is because it's very difficult to remove every little piece of breast tissue, and the breasts also go into the underarms, into the axilla. So it could be that there is a tiny bit left, but overall, the risk of developing breast cancer is less than in the normal population if you've had the breast tissue removed. So it's a very effective option, but it's also a very difficult choice to make, I think, because it's a serious surgery, it's a large surgery, and it can have a lot of implications for psychological and mental well-being as well. Now, just one thing to mention, I've put down chemo prevention, which is basically there is a medication called tamoxifen, which some women take when they have breast cancer as a treatment. But it's also been found that you can take this for a 5-year course, and that overall reduces the incidence of breast cancer. This isn't suitable for everybody, and it's more suitable for BRCA2 carriers than for BRCA1, because of the types of breast cancer that more often happen. But I'm not going to go into too much detail because I think that's a bit small print, but it's good to be aware that there's something out there like this. Now, in terms of ovarian cancer, this is a little bit different because there isn't really any effective screening tool. So in breast cancer, if you get an MRI and they see something that looks suspicious, you can get that checked very early. But with ovarian cancer, there isn't really, so ultrasounds are not really effective in screening for this. So if a woman is known to have a BRCA1 or 2 mutation, the mainstay of treatment is with surgery. And what this is would be removal of the ovaries and fallopian tubes to avoid cancer developing in them. You would never do this until the woman has completed her family, as of course, if the surgery is carried out early, there would be no way to do that. And also, it's not usually offered to women who are younger than 35 years. And the reason for this is because once your ovaries are removed, you go into menopause. And this has a lot of health effects as well. So this affects, for example, your bones, you have a higher risk of osteoporosis, it affects your heart and your cardiovascular system. So we also need to balance the risk benefit of having this kind of surgery. However, if the surgery is done, the risk reduction in ovarian cancer risk is about 95%, so it's very effective. And interestingly as well, your breast cancer risk goes down. And the reason for this is that your ovaries produce a lot of hormones, which can stimulate the breast tissue, which may cause cancer. So if that's no longer there, your breast cancer risk is reduced a lot. And often hormone replacement therapy is offered to women who had their ovaries removed until they are 50 because of the effects I mentioned about premature menopause. So it's to help with symptoms and also because of health benefits. Now, in terms of prostate cancer, the main screening tools are an exam, so a digital rectal exam, which can be done by most health professionals, including GPs. And then there is a specific blood test called the prostate-specific antigen. Now, there's in the UK, no national screening program for this, but if you're over 50, you can ask your GP to check it, especially if you have symptoms. But if there is a known genetic risk factor, it's very important to get this tested earlier. So I would recommend at least 40, maybe even younger, because this is when prostate cancer can develop in men who carry a BRCA, especially BRCA2 mutation. And so the importance of all of this really is that early cancer detection dramatically improves survival rates. I think most people know that the earlier you catch a cancer, the better chance you have of curing it. And I mean, this is really very marked. So if we look, for example, again at breast cancer, the 5-year survival rates in an early stage are 99%. Well, if they're late, it's less, it's 23%. So it's a huge difference, and it can really change lives. And so knowing about these inherited cancer genetics risks empowers individuals to manage their risk and improve their health outcomes. So just to summarize, up to 1 in 40 people in the Ashkenazi Jewish population may carry a BRCA gene variant. The BRCA1 and BRCA2 gene variants predispose to breast and ovarian cancer in women and prostate cancer in men. We've mentioned the slight increase in pancreatic cancer and melanoma. And if an individual has one of these gene variants, there is a 50% chance that it was passed on to each child. So knowing about your risk early can help you to detect the cancer early or fully prevent it from happening as well. Okay, so that was just a whiz-stop tour. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now. And if anyone has any questions, be happy to answer them. I know it was a lot of information.
It was really clear, and it's a lot to think about and a lot to take in, but it really shows that if we make people aware, it's such a huge difference, hopefully that it can make. I mean, you must have seen in your experiences over the years the difference of, as we say, people talking about it more, people being more open about it, and knowing where to go, and I mean, saving lives is just you must see that connection in your work.
Definitely, very much so. And I find that most people, once they do know, they do feel empowered. And even if this happens after a cancer diagnosis, it can still be very helpful, especially in terms of family. So I'm sure Jess has a better insight into this, but if she would, for example, if Jess's mother never found out, Jess would still be in the dark as well, very likely. But she can now manage her own cancer risk to change her story. And it's something very powerful if it's used in the right way.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I'm thinking, empowering. Because you feel so many things when faced with diagnosis and things like that. And one of the things is no control, and it kind of gives you a focus and something you can look into, and it empowers you.
Yeah, definitely.
Rachel, did you want to?
Yeah, can I ask a question? So I'll ask it first, and then I'll explain my background. So just out of interest, so there's Genetics, which raises awareness of other genetic diseases within the Jewish community, and they don't test for BRCA. And from what I understand, you only get tested for BRCA if you've got a family history. So we're really fortunate. My husband's a carrier, and we've just actually finished PGD, which is a form of IVF to remove the BRCA gene for our future child, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And so please God, it won't affect the next generation, because his family was very affected by the BRCA gene, BRCA1. But I was disappointed. Well, I don't know if I was disappointed, but ashamed that with all the attention on genetics, there's a lot of people that might be aware of those 9 diseases, but not BRCA, or not being tested for BRCA. So how would someone go about being tested without having that family background, or
Sorry, do you mean for BRCA or in general?
For BRCA. So Genetics would just test you, whereas for BRCA, you can't just say, can I be tested for BRCA if I'm right? You have to have that family history.
Yeah.
How would people of my generation necessarily know or go out and get checked?
Definitely, yeah. So I completely agree with you in a way that it's a bit disappointing how difficult it is, especially for people of a certain background where the risk is actually quite high to get a BRCA test. I think things are changing a bit. So now, for example, Ashkenazi Jewish women who develop breast cancer, it's recommended that all of them have BRCA testing because it's such a high risk. Also, any woman with ovarian cancer, it's recommended that BRCA is tested, and that's not just Ashkenazi women, but any woman. So people are becoming more aware, they're understanding now, I think. And the other thing is that people in the past have often thought, why should you know about something, especially genetics, if you can't do anything about it? And so it's true that we can't change the BRCA gene in a person at the moment, but we can do a lot about it. So I think people are now understanding that. So we can do all of those preventative things that we've talked about. And you've just given an amazing example about how you can choose to have a child that then doesn't have this, so you don't have to worry about that in the future. You can screen other family members. So there is a lot that can be done, which I think is, because of the way things are evolving, I think it will become easier and people will be more aware about testing it as well. And actually your story is it's really, really amazing, and it's very new. So as I'm sure as you know, the law that was passed that allowed for the prenatal testing to be done, it's actually relatively new. So thanks a lot for sharing that. That's really cool.
It's also the first babies on the NHS, which is incredible. Not
Yeah.
in
The NHS paid for it.
Yeah, it's completely new. It's just a year, I think, since they've been doing it, something like that.
I didn't realize, because when I was first tested, it was when I was 18. And at that point, they told me those things that you could do in the future. But we never even looked into it.
Yeah.
I think it was 2 years ago, and then it's qualified.
Yeah.
So,
I think if I might say, I think it's very hard on the to be tested through the NHS. I think that even if you do have a family history, you have to score so many points before they will let you have it on the NHS.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons that sort of we offer the test, because to have it privately is anything sort of from £1,300. And I know Jess's mum, who she had to pay £1,600 to get the testing, even though she already had cancer and wanted a check to see if she was, it was BRCA. And I think that's where Myogenes have come along, is we decided that we wanted to be able to offer the best test at a price that is much more reasonable. Not, it's still not cheap, but for us, for £400, we can offer it privately. However, we always make sure it has to go through a doctor, so we don't just let anybody receive their results. It's very important that everyone has pre and post counselling.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons why we've offer it now, is because it is so hard to actually get the test on the NHS.
Yeah. The problem with the NHS criteria, as Claire mentioned, is you have to go through this family history criteria called the Manchester score. And if you don't reach, so let's say you need 17 points and you have 16, you still won't get a test.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate that it just will miss a lot of people. And that's where Myogenes can really come in and make a big difference, because it's very unfortunate for those people who are then missing out on that information that can really change their lives. And I don't know how things will progress in the future in terms of that, but at the moment it's definitely, there are not enough people being tested.
And also, Dahlia, correct me if I'm wrong, we test for the BRCA1 and BRCA2, but there's another gene, the PALB2, that is often very linked to breast and ovarian cancer. And the NHS, I think they might have just started testing for it,
That's right.
but that was often missed. And so when we did it, we offer a panel of 15 genes that can be associated with breast and ovarian cancer. So ours is a very comprehensive panel that we test for.
Thank you, Rachel. Kristen, go ahead.
Hi. I was just wondering, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, Claire, but of how many people are then tested positive who have been refused tests on the NHS? Do you get a lot?
You know what, we don't, obviously for patients, it's, you know, obviously their confidentiality, so the results go directly to a doctor. But yes, we have definitely had people that say that they were, you know, they slipped through the net, and then they had the test and found out, and it's, you know, it's life-changing. You know, somebody, you know, I mean, we've got Jess obviously with us now, and, you know, for her, it's life-changing. It's not only just having the knowledge, but it's actually being able to do something about it. And for the lovely lady before with the you know, having the baby, to be able to know that you can remove the BRCA gene. I mean, if your husband didn't know that, then obviously you would never, you know, it's something that would get passed through to the next generation. So unfortunately, no, we're here to sort of try and help what we can, you know, for people that don't get it on the NHS. I think, are you reading other questions?
I think Deborah Deborah, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Just a quick question. I missed the beginning, so I'm sorry if this is repeated. I wanted to know if the gene is passed down equally through maternal and paternal, or is one more dominant than the other?
No, so it's equal. It seems to be equal. So if it can come as equally from your mother or from your father.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you, Deborah. Adam, did you want to say something?
Yeah, if possible, please. Thank you. So if I was a carrier, my mum was tested positive. If I am a carrier, which I've yet to be tested, at what point would I get my children tested? We've got 2 young kids.
Mm-hmm. So generally, you wouldn't do anything in terms of screening before you would be before they would be in their mid-20s. Okay. So I wouldn't personally recommend getting them tested before they're 18. Okay. Because it won't really change anything, to be fair, unless they have children earlier, which, you know, I'm guessing they probably won't. Yeah, no, but I think it's good to open up the conversation, and yeah, maybe around 18 would be a good time. Yeah. Also, if you don't have the gene, then you don't need to talk to them about it.
Sure. That's the end of the line. That's the kind of
in terms of your children, that's the end of the line. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you, Adam. Anybody else want to ask anything? Or give over any experiences that you may have had?
Just say something about BRCA2 carriers, because I've read that if both parents have BRCA2 mutations and they pass it down, there is an increased likelihood of the children having either birth defects or developing. So with my brother, when he was little, had leukemia, and my dad told me just the other day, I've been BRCA positive for 5 years, that he's had loads of prostate cancer in his side of the family. So I just wonder, is that proven that 2 BRCA carriers, if they have children together, the likelihood is increased risks for their children or not? Is it still a bit?
Yeah, so there is quite, so as you know, let's say you would have one BRCA2 variant, which is abnormal or a mutation, and one normal variant. And then that would be the same in the partner. So the risk of a child getting both BRCA2 variants, which are not normal, is 1 in 4. So you have a 1 in 4 chance of having 2 normal BRCA2 genes, then 50% chance of having 1 abnormal one, and a 1 in 4 chance of having 2 abnormal. In children with 2 abnormal BRCA2 variants, there are definitely other defects that are proven. So there are developmental defects, and there's also different types of anemias, and leukemias could also be linked, actually. So yes, there are more risks. In the case that both the partners have the BRCA2 mutation, that's definitely a scenario for pre-implantation genetics. So I personally think that's a really good chance to have a look at that. Also, it's as you know, because it's 1 in 40 in Ashkenazi communities, that is not such a small risk that both people will be carriers. So yeah, that's definitely something to think about. But yes, there are other risks with that. And in terms of BRCA1, if an embryo inherits both abnormal versions, it's usually not viable. So they usually don't survive to birth. Yeah. So they do have quite substantial effects.
I think Jeremy or Nivi.
Can I just ask, so if one of the parents have a BRCA gene that's mutated, so a child gets one mutated gene and one healthy gene,
yeah,
what's the chances of getting sick if you have one gene? Is that what we were talking about in the beginning?
Yes, yes. So that's the most common scenario, and that's all of the statistics I mentioned apply to one mutated copy and one normal copy. Yeah, having two is not as common.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
If anyone's got questions afterwards that you think of, we'll give my email, and you can email us any questions at all, and then we'll make sure that you get, the answers.
Can I ask one last question?
Yeah, sure.
So if we come to your company and we wanted to do some, do you do screening to decide which genes you're going to test, or automatically you screen the whole panel that you can?
So we do two. We do one just for the breast and ovarian panel that includes the BRCA1 and BRCA2 and 13 other genes. And we also offer another test that looks at 98 genes, which is associated with 25 hereditary cancers. So that includes the whole breast panel gene, the breast panel, but it also includes for blood, head, neck, thyroid, so 24 other hereditary cancers.
And can I just ask if the prostate cancer has other genes that are... What do you mean? It's not
No, it's fine. It's fine. We can hear you.
I've unmuted it. I can use computers. So with, let's say if it's prostate cancer or pancreas cancer, would you be able then to say, actually, these are the ones we'd recommend? Like, would we approach you and say, we have history of prostate cancer and pancreatic cancer, and and then you tell us, okay, this is the history, this is the panel we recommend to test?
Yeah, so we don't do them all separately. We do the breast and the ovarian cancer as one test, and the other test will include all of those. So all the different ones that you mentioned, prostate, I think you said pancreas, yeah. And it looks at all of those. So that would be just one, it'd be one test, but only obviously looking at the hereditary genes of those different cancers.
And would that be, and is that the 400 pounds, or the 400 pounds is the one that only looks at the 2 genes?
So it's not 2 genes, it looks at 15 genes. Yeah, that's 400. And the one for all of the different cancers is 500. So we've tried to keep it obviously as low as we can.
And then if you have, let's say, one positive and you have lots of family, other members that need to get tested, it will be, I assume, the same rate for each of them.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. It's not like buy 3, get... No, I'm joking.
No. No. We try and make it. But obviously, as Dali would say, that if the next generation haven't got it, like the gentleman before Adam, if he hasn't got it, then obviously his children don't need to be tested. So always start with the generation above. I don't know if anyone else has got
any other questions. Can't see any hands up. Really appreciate those of you who spoke up and contributed and said your personal stories and those that ask questions. I think it's been a real value what we've learned tonight and what we've heard about, and taking on board, as I think most of us here, potentially, I can't see everybody, but being Ashkenazi Jews, the risks that we do face, and we have to be realistic about. And something like this is just really incredible to have that information. And I'm really glad that we've done this and raised awareness, which is what it's all about. Because it, as I said, it can make a huge difference. We heard from Rachel and Stuart, it's definitely made a difference to their life, please God. And to other people, and hopefully going forward, that more people will take this on board and realise how important it is. So thank you, all of you, for speaking.
Thank you. And you've got, Eva, you've got our emails?
Yes, yes, and the website.
The website, yeah, www.myogenes.com.
MYOGENES.
Yes,
but we've got it on all the flyers and everything.
Okay. And also that
Joe Nightingale there, she's got to let me unmute you.
On.
Okay, you're on. You're on, Joe.
No, you can talk. Can I talk?
Yes, yes.
Right. So I used to work on prostate cancer, and my dad had prostate cancer. There's a lot of this stuff to do with the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes, which is spoken about in terms of women, breast cancer, ovarian cancer. How do we make men more aware of their risk?
In fact, we're doing a webinar on Wednesday night about men's cancer, men's prostate, testicular and breast cancer for men. So you're quite right. I think slowly people are beginning to realise that it's not just obviously women. And I think it's important to raise awareness. But what we can do is we're doing the webinar on Wednesday. And if you wanted, we can, we'll be recording it, and we can, pass it on to to anyone that you are working with on prostate cancer.
So I'm not working in the area at the moment. We were just very lucky that I went to a conference and my mum came as well, and she recognised all the symptoms in my dad. And we pulled him in to my group and had him tested, and it came back. And he came back actually with a very, very low Gleason score. But when they did the prostatectomy, because he said he didn't want any of the treatment, he just wanted it out, he actually had a very aggressive cancer. And if he hadn't had the surgery, then he would have died from it. But it's not something that men really talk about or really want to even think about. And I just think women are much more aware of their own bodies and things that can go wrong, and that association with the BRCA genes is not high up in men's radar.
No, it's true. I mean, Dali, what's your experience with men with prostate cancer?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you, and I found that often. I mean, of course, this is stereotyping and it's a generalization, but very often women they don't mind knowing about risks, and then they just sort of think, okay, I'll just get on with it and I'll do what I need to do. I find sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to convince some men to go to look for a problem that they might not think is there. So no, I think it's probably something cultural in a way, also probably something to do with that we've not been open with men about all of their risks as well. And the other thing is that women seek medical attention during pregnancy. So there's like a point of contact with medical professionals, and that would always lead, to basically every pregnant woman will get a full health check, while men don't have that point of contact. So that could be one other reason why it's not looked at as much. But I agree that the awareness really needs to be raised. And I think, we're aware of that. We're trying to do that. And I hope it will change in the future, that it will become more equal. But yeah.
An event like this, some names on screens are men's names. I don't know who's behind those screens, but hopefully, that encourages men to open a conversation or be open to talking about it. And I think that there is progress being made in that, and maybe, I mean, this is not my place to say, but with an evening like this, if you had a man who would be willing to come and speak, let's say, about his experiences, I think that also would make a difference.
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, I think even with BRCA, they're called the breast cancer genes. So it's even just like the branding of them, points towards women a lot more. So it's just a bit of changing the perception that needs to happen. Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, I think looks like everyone said to give another 10 seconds if anybody wants to put their hand up or unmute. Okay.
May I just ask one more?
Sure,
yes,
please.
Of course.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks. Could you elaborate on what the genetic counselling is once someone is tested positive?
Yep. So what genetic counselling basically will be, again, to go through all of the risks. So basically a bit what I did today. So just to explain the risks and to explain what you can do about it and what the chances are of your other family members being affected. Genetic counselling is generally non-directive, so it's not going to tell you to do something. It's going to give you all the information to allow you to make a decision and to try and help you in making that decision. Is there anything in particular that's on your mind that you would talk about?
No, it's just when you hear the word counselling, you think about a counsellor. So it's just that's what I was thinking. Whereby you talk more about the being non-directive is just help and advice.
Exactly. Yeah, it's to give you like all the information that you need to make your own decision, basically.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody from Myogenes.
Thank you so much.
No, it was really valuable evening, and really appreciate everything, as I said, that everybody's contributed. So yeah, just everybody, you know which direction to be pointed into, the website, and if you want any more information, you can contact me. I can pass on emails and things. And again, just really appreciate your time this evening on a really important subject. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.